The mining moon Kalin 3 was quiet, almost too quiet for a place that had seen years of constant digging and rough living. Its barren surface was pocked with craters and scars from countless explosions, a harsh testament to the struggle for survival in the outer reaches of human space. On this particular day, Commander Elira Voss stood at the edge of the settlement's command center, her sharp eyes scanning the star-filled sky for any sign of movement. The Virex Dominion had been tightening their grip on the sector for months, pushing humanity to the brink of extinction, and now their cruisers had closed in on Kalin 3, demanding unconditional surrender. Elira knew that giving up meant death or slavery, but fighting seemed impossible. The small force she commanded was no match for the advanced ships that hovered like vultures just beyond the moon's thin atmosphere. Still, she refused to show fear. Hope was all they had left. The citizens whispered about a ghost from the past, a warship so powerful it had become legend, the Aegis Eternal. Most believed it was just a myth, a tale told to children to keep their spirits alive during darker times. But Elira clung to that hope, knowing the stories of the Aegis were not just stories. She had heard old veterans speak of it in hushed tones, recalling battles where it tore through enemy lines like a storm. Suddenly, the sensors on the command deck beeped wildly. A strange object was approaching fast, moving in a way no known ship could. Panic and curiosity gripped the crew as the shape grew larger on the display, a massive vessel, its hull battered but unmistakable. The legends were real. The Aegis Eternal had come back. As the Virex ships prepared to fire, a blast of energy erupted from the Aegis, shattering the blockade with overwhelming force. The ground trembled beneath the moon's surface as explosions rocked the orbit. Elira felt a strange mix of relief and fear. What power had returned, and what would it mean for the future of humanity? The Aegis extended docking arms toward the settlement, signaling a chance for rescue. Elira knew this was only the beginning, and as she boarded the ancient warship, the weight of the past and the promise of a new war hung heavy in the air. The battle for survival was far from over, but with the myth now real, humanity might just have a chance to fight back. The moment Commander Elira Voss stepped aboard the Aegis Eternal, a strange silence enveloped her. A silence unlike any she had ever known in the chaos of war. The vast interior of the ship stretched endlessly in every direction, with walls of cold metal lit by dim blue lights that flickered like the heartbeat of a giant beast waking from a long slumber. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, disturbed only by their footsteps, and the faint hum of dormant machinery echoed faintly, as if the warship itself were breathing softly. Elira moved cautiously, her hand instinctively resting on the grip of her sidearm, though deep down she knew this was no ordinary vessel. It was a relic, a legend come to life, and it carried power far beyond what she had seen before. As she ventured deeper into the ship's bowels, the control room appeared before her. A sprawling chamber filled with ancient consoles, screens flickering to life as if recognizing a long-lost friend. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room, cold and mechanical but tinged with a strange warmth. "Greetings, Commander Voss. I am Guardian, the artificial intelligence of the Aegis Eternal. Your arrival has been long awaited." The voice was calm, steady, and carried an authority that made Elira's heart race with excitement and a hint of fear. She realized that the ship was not only alive but aware, and it had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Guardian explained that the Aegis had been hidden in a cloaked pocket of space, untouched and forgotten after humanity's last great war with the Virex Dominion, waiting for a time when it could be called upon again. As the AI brought the ship's systems back online one by one, corridors lit up and weapon systems hummed quietly beneath the surface. Elira's mind raced. This was no mere warship, it was a fortress capable of turning the tide of war if wielded correctly. But the question remained, why had it returned now, and how much of its original crew remained? She explored more, finding cryogenic pods lined up like rows of forgotten soldiers frozen in time. Each pod held a member of the original crew, preserved through decades in stasis, waiting for a chance to awaken. One pod hissed open, revealing Admiral Rourke, a man whose name was spoken with reverence and fear in the same breath across human space. His eyes opened slowly, clouded by years, but filled with fierce determination. Rourke's presence brought new hope and new complications. The old war tactics he carried clashed with Illyra's more modern views, creating tension as they debated the best path forward. Meanwhile, Guardian warned them of an incoming Virex fleet, unlike anything before, a massive force known as the World Cleaver Fleet, designed to destroy entire planets. The realization struck hard. The war was far from over, and the Aegis was humanity's last best hope. As the ship powered up fully, its engines roared to life, sending vibrations through the hull that felt like a heartbeat quickening with purpose. The crew began to rally, renewed by the presence of this ancient titan reborn from myth. Yet beneath the surface, a secret was buried deep within the Aegis's core, an ancient protocol locked away after the last war, containing weapons and technologies so devastating that their use had been forbidden. The decision to activate them would not be taken lightly, for it could change the fate of humanity and the galaxy forever. As the Aegis prepared to leap into battle once more, Illyra stood at the bridge, staring out at the cold stars beyond, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The myths were true, the warship was real, and now it was awake. The battle for the future had begun. The deep corridors of the Aegis Eternal hummed softly as life slowly returned to the ancient warship. But beneath the steady pulse of machinery, tension simmered quietly among the crew, old and new, who found themselves thrown together in a strange and uneasy alliance. Commander Illyra Voss, still adjusting to the surreal reality of commanding a legendary ship that once was thought lost to history, walked the length of the ship's main deck with cautious steps, her eyes catching flickers of movement in the shadows, figures emerging from cryogenic pods, faces pale but eyes sharp, carrying the weight of battles long past, yet not forgotten. Among them was Admiral Rourke, whose presence loomed large over the ship like a ghost from a bygone era. His stern gaze held a mixture of pride and bitterness as he surveyed the vessel he once commanded, now reclaimed by a generation far younger and braver, yet less hardened by war's cruelty. The old crew, awoken from their frozen sleep, struggled to come to terms with the new reality, new technology, new politics, new tactics, and some looked upon Voss and her modern human crew with suspicion, unwilling to trust outsiders with the fate of their sacred ship. Illyra felt their eyes on her, questioning her right to command, and it was clear the ship's true power could only be unleashed if the divide between past and present was bridged. Meanwhile, Guardian, the ship's AI, worked tirelessly, analyzing vast troves of data and scanning the galaxy for threats. It brought disturbing news. The Virex Dominion was deploying a terrifying new weapon fleet, known as the World Cleavers, massive battle groups designed not merely to conquer, but to erase entire planets from existence. This fleet's approach was rapid and unstoppable, and the Aegis was humanity's last hope to stop them. But to wield the ship's full might, Illyra and Rourke faced a dilemma. The Aegis harbored forbidden codes, ancient protocols locked away after humanity's near destruction in the last war. These codes contained the keys to powerful weapons and systems banned for their devastating potential, their use outlawed by treaties born from the scars of history. The question was, should they risk activating these hidden powers and possibly doom themselves to the same fate as before, or fight cautiously and risk losing everything? Late into the ship's dim-lit corridors, the crew gathered in small groups, debating fiercely about the path forward. Some feared the awakening of forbidden weapons would bring destruction worse than the Virex's wrath. Others argued that survival demanded desperate measures. Illyra found herself caught in the middle, pressured by the voices of the old crew who remembered the cost of war, and the young colonists who saw only the enemy before them. Then came the discovery of a hidden chamber deep within the ship's engineering core, sealed by an encryption that defied even Guardian's full decoding ability. Rourke insisted that only the original crew's combined knowledge could unlock it, a last safeguard against misuse. As they worked together, past grudges slowly gave way to shared purpose, and a fragile trust blossomed between Elira and Rourke, two leaders from different worlds united by a common cause. When the code finally broke open, it revealed a treasure trove of technology, the heart of the Aegis's power, the quantum phase cannons, the gravitic shields, and the most feared of all, the Genesis lance, capable of breaking planets apart. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Elira's shoulders. Activating these systems could turn the tide of war, but might also unleash horrors they could not control. Meanwhile, Virex scouts drew nearer, their shadows stretching across the stars like a dark promise of annihilation. The crew scrambled to prepare the ship, rearming weapons and testing defenses, every system humming to life with newfound urgency. But tensions remained, and whispers of betrayal stirred in the corridors. Some feared that the old crew might sabotage the activation, unwilling to risk repeating history, while others suspected spies among the colonists who saw the forbidden codes as a threat to peace. Elira could feel the pressure mounting, her every decision scrutinized, her resolve tested like never before. As the countdown to battle loomed, she stood before the bridge's panoramic window, staring into the void where the enemy fleet awaited, knowing that the choice she made now would echo through history, either a beacon of hope or a dark shadow of destruction. The myth of the Aegis Eternal had come alive once more, but the greatest battle was not just with the enemy outside. It was the struggle within, between past and future, fear and courage, and the heavy price of power. The Aegis Eternal, once a myth whispered in the darkest corners of human space, now surged with life, its engines roaring as ancient systems hummed awake, a sleeping giant reborn with a power that stretched far beyond the imagination of those who had doubted its existence. Commander Elira Voss stood at the helm of this titanic warship, feeling the weight of generations pressing down upon her, knowing that the choices she made in this moment could either save humanity or doom it to oblivion, as the ancient protocols that had been locked away for decades now thrummed beneath the hull, their power tempting and dangerous, promising the kind of destruction that no living soul wished to wield. But that might be the only weapon strong enough to shatter the Virex. Dominion's relentless advance, her alliance with Admiral Rourke, the living link to the ship's storied past, was fragile yet vital, their differing views on war and survival clashing yet melding as they prepared to unleash the Aegis's full might. A war machine unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, armed with quantum phase cannons capable of piercing the toughest shields, gravitic barriers that could bend reality around the ship, and most terrifying of all, the Genesis lance, a weapon capable of cracking planets and reshaping the very heavens, a power that came with a price no one could ignore. The crew, a mixture of awakened veterans and fresh faces from human colonies, worked feverishly to master the ship's systems, forging bonds born from desperation and hope, training through simulated battles and emergency drills while the Virex forces moved ever closer, their dreadnoughts casting long shadows over the stars, ready to extinguish the flickering light of humanity forever. With every passing hour, the tension mounted, and Elira found herself questioning not only the strength of their weapons, but the courage of those who fought beside her. The burden of leadership heavy on her shoulders, as she wrestled with the ghosts of the past and the uncertain future, knowing that the battle ahead was not just for territory, but for the very soul of humankind. When the first shots rang out, the Aegis Eternal moved like a storm through the darkness, its weapons blazing, cutting through Virex lines with a fury that stunned allies and enemies alike, a symbol of defiance and raw power that reignited the hope of oppressed colonies and inspired whispered tales of a new dawn. Yet victory came at a cost. Damage tore through the ship's hull, casualties weighed heavily on the crew, and the relentless Virex retaliation forced Elira and Rourke to make brutal decisions, striking hard and fast but always aware that the next move could be their last. Amidst the chaos, they uncovered signs of Virex spies within human ranks, sowing discord and mistrust, threatening to unravel the fragile alliance they had built. The crew grappled with fear and uncertainty, but Elira's steady command and Rourke's battle-hardened tactics held them together, forging a unity stronger than metal, steel tempered by shared purpose. As they reclaimed colony after colony, rallying human survivors to their banner, the rebellion spread like wildfire, a human war machine rising from the ashes of defeat, defiant and unyielding. Yet the specter of the Virex World Cleaver fleet loomed ever larger, a dark storm gathering on the horizon, promising devastation on a scale the galaxy had never known. Illyra knew that their next confrontation would be decisive, a final test of will and power that would decide the fate of all they held dear. And as the Aegis Eternal prepared to face the overwhelming might of their enemy, the crew braced themselves, hearts pounding with the weight of history and the fierce hope that humanity would not just survive but rise, stronger, united and unstoppable. The cold void of space around Sol's refuge, the last human colony orbiting Earth's old star, grew heavy with tension as the Aegis Eternal slipped silently through the darkness, its massive silhouette a stark contrast against the backdrop of distant suns and swirling nebulae. Commander Illyra Voss stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the holographic display where a monstrous Virex armada had gathered, their ships stretching across the star system like a deadly web, poised to strike with overwhelming firepower that threatened to erase humanity's final sanctuary. The weight of responsibility pressed upon Illyra as she reviewed every strategy, every option, knowing the fate of millions hung in the balance, while Admiral Rourke beside her gritted his teeth, the memories of past wars flashing in his mind. Wars lost to arrogance, wars won by desperate courage, and this battle would be no different, a brutal test of will, skill, and the indomitable spirit of humankind. The crew of the Aegis prepared for the inevitable clash, working tirelessly to ready the warship's ancient but devastating weapons, while Guardian, the ship's AI, coordinated stealth systems and deployed decoy drones to confuse the enemy's sensors, weaving a fragile web of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. As the first Virex ships opened fire, the silence of space shattered into a violent symphony of blasts and explosions, the Aegis dancing through the deadly storm, its Nova-class beam cannons piercing enemy hulls with precision, its gravitic shields bending light and energy, protecting the fragile core from destruction. The battle raged fiercely, the void illuminated by bursts of fire and debris. The crew's nerves stretched taut as they maneuvered through enemy formations, trading blows that echoed across the star system. But the Virex were relentless, their dreadnoughts concentrating fire on Sol's refuge, threatening to ignite the planet's atmosphere and extinguish the last beacon of human hope. In the face of this dire threat, Illyra made a desperate choice, ordering the activation of the Genesis Lance, diverting its destructive power not at the enemy fleet, but as a protective shield around the colony, risking the ship's offensive strength to save countless lives below. The blast radiated outward in a shimmering bubble, absorbing incoming attacks but straining the Aegis's systems to their limits. Sparks flying across consoles as engines faltered under the immense energy draw. The enemy capital ship seized the moment, firing a massive plasma beam that slammed into the Aegis's main engine, crippling its drive and sending the warship into a slow, spiraling drift, the bridge shaking violently as alarms blared and power flickered. Chaos erupted as crew members scrambled to contain damage and maintain control. But Illyra's calm voice cut through the panic, rallying her people, reminding them that their fight was far from over. With the ship's main engine dead, they faced annihilation unless they could find a way to strike back. It was then that Admiral Rourke stepped forward, taking command with a grim resolve, directing the damaged vessel toward one last desperate gambit, a direct assault on the heart of the Virex armada, targeting their command ship in a bid to cripple the enemy's coordination and turn the tide of battle. As the Aegis closed in on the colossal dreadnought, both sides unleashing everything they had, the warship's battered hull groaned under fire, but the crew fought with unmatched determination, knowing that the fate of humanity depended on this moment. Then, with a surge of power drawn from the ship's deepest reserves, Guardian activated Protocol Skyfire, a forbidden zero-point detonation encased in a temporal shield designed to obliterate everything in its blast radius while protecting the ship from immediate destruction, a weapon of last resort born from humanity's darkest hours. The explosion blossomed like a star, consuming the enemy fleet in a brilliant, terrible light that lit up the void for miles, while the Aegis vanished into the flash, its fate uncertain, but its mission fulfilled. In the silence that followed, Survivors aboard Soul's Refuge looked up to the stars with a mix of awe and grief, knowing that the myth had become reality, that the warship had sacrificed itself to give humanity a fighting chance. Whispers of the Aegis Eternal spread through the colonies like wildfire, a symbol of hope and defiance, inspiring a new era of unity and resistance against the Virex dominion. And as the first rays of a new dawn touched the surface of Soul's Refuge, Commander Voss and Admiral Rourke stood together, their eyes fixed on the horizon, knowing that the battle for survival had only just begun. But with legends like the Aegis on their side, humanity would rise, stronger, unbroken, and ready to reclaim the stars. The silence that followed the blinding light of Protocol Skyfire stretched across space like a heavy breath held too long, leaving behind a void where the monstrous Virex fleet once threatened to crush humanity's last refuge, Soul's Refuge. Yet amid the stillness, whispers stirred, faint signals picked up by scattered human outposts, rumors of the Aegis Eternal's fate, and stories that grew louder with each passing day, telling of a warship that had become more than a machine, a symbol of hope and resilience that refused to die. Commander Elira Voss and Admiral Rourke survived the cataclysm, their escape pods ejected in the chaos, landing on Soul's Refuge battered and exhausted but alive, and as they recovered among survivors, they understood the weight of their mission had shifted. From fighting battles to inspiring a legacy that would outlast any war. The war was far from over, and the Virex dominion, though shattered, remained a looming threat lurking beyond the fringe, regrouping and plotting revenge with cold patience. But humanity, now united under a banner forged in the fires of sacrifice, and courage grew stronger each day, with colonies banding together, inspired by the legend of the Aegis, rallying forces and rebuilding fleets that carried the spirit of that mighty warship. Elira and Rourke traveled among the stars, visiting worlds scarred by war, sharing the story of the Aegis Eternal's final stand, igniting hope in hearts that had long given up, reminding humanity that even in the darkest times, legends could rise to become legacies, that the courage of a few could change the fate of many. They oversaw the birth of the New Fleet Initiative, a coalition of ships and soldiers trained to carry forward the tactics and technologies recovered from the Aegis, blending ancient wisdom with modern innovation, creating a force capable of meeting the Virex threat head-on and reclaiming lost worlds. Yet beneath the optimism, shadows lingered, whispers of Virex agents seeking to sabotage peace, fears of new weapons that could tip the balance once again, and the unspoken question of what price humanity was willing to pay for survival. As the years passed, monuments to the Aegis Eternal were built across human colonies, museums housing relics salvaged from the warship's wreckage, and schools teaching the history of that pivotal war, ensuring that future generations understood both the horrors of conflict and the strength found in unity. Elira, now older but still fierce, stood before one such monument on Soul's Refuge, a towering sculpture forged from fragments of the ship's hull, and reflected on the journey from myth to legacy, the battles fought, the lives lost, and the hope kindled in countless souls. She knew that legends were fragile, shaped by stories told and retold, but legacies endured in the actions of those who chose to carry them forward, and it was humanity's determination that would define the future, not just the weapons of war. As the stars twinkled above, a reminder of both the vastness of space and the endless possibilities it held, Elira felt a quiet pride, knowing that the Aegis Eternal was no longer just a ship lost to time, but a beacon guiding humanity through the darkness toward a new dawn, where the courage to fight and the hope to rebuild would shine brighter than any weapon. And as new explorers prepared to journey beyond the known, they carried with them the legacy of a warship that proved myths could come alive, and in doing so, inspire the rise of a stronger, united human race, ready to write the next chapter among the stars.